Have you ever had someone leave you a review so unfair and untrue that it made your blood boil? Well, that's exactly what happened to me last month, and what followed was something I never expected. Stick around to hear how one bad review led to a confrontation that changed both our lives forever. Before I dive into this wild story, if you enjoy real-life drama with unexpected twists, hit that subscribe button now to join our community of truth-tellers. Now, let's get into it. It was a regular Tuesday morning when I checked my business notifications on my phone. I run a small bakery called Sweet Endings in downtown Portland, a place I've poured my heart and soul into for the past 7 years. My day usually starts at 4 a.m., kneading dough, preparing fillings, and ensuring everything is perfect before we open our doors at 7. My customers are generally wonderful people who appreciate the care we put into our craft. But that morning, my heart sank as I scrolled through the notifications. There it was, a 1-star review from someone named Richard Matthews. The review read, "Absolutely disgusting experience. The staff was rude, the place was filthy, and the croissants tasted like cardboard. Do yourself a favor and stay away from this overpriced tourist trap." I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Filthy, my bakery. The same place that passed health inspections with flying colors. Rude staff. I personally trained every one of my employees to treat customers like family. And cardboard croissants. Those same croissants that had won Best in City 3 years running. I set my phone down and took a deep breath. Bad reviews happen to everyone, I told myself. It's part of being in business. But something about this one felt off. The accusations were so specific yet so wildly inaccurate that I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. I asked my manager, Sophia, if she remembered serving anyone named Richard Matthews recently. She shook her head, but then paused and said, "Wait, there was that man yesterday, the one who came in 5 minutes before closing and demanded we make him a fresh batch of everything." And suddenly it clicked. I remembered him clearly now. A tall man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and an expensive watch. He had stormed in at 6:55 p.m., when we close at 7:00, insisting we bake him fresh pastries for a meeting the next morning. I had politely explained that while we had plenty of fresh items available, we couldn't start a new batch that late in the day, but we'd be happy to prepare a special order for him if he could pick it up the following morning. He had looked at me like I'd suggested he eat dirt. "Do you know who I am?" he had asked, his voice rising. "I'm Richard Matthews. I run the largest real estate firm in the city. I can make or break businesses like yours with a single word." I had remained calm and offered him our remaining pastries at a discount, which he refused before storming out, promising we would regret this. And now, here was his revenge, a completely fabricated review, designed to hurt my business. My first instinct was to respond online, to defend my bakery, and call out his lies. But I knew from experience that online arguments rarely end well. Instead, I decided to do something that surprised even me. I was going to confront him in person. It wasn't hard to find Richard Matthews Real Estate. Their office occupied the entire 15th floor of a gleaming downtown skyscraper, just 15 minutes from my bakery. I spent the morning preparing a special box of our finest pastries, the very ones he had claimed tasted like cardboard, and headed over during my lunch break. As I stepped out of the elevator onto the 15th floor, I was immediately struck by the opulence of the place. Marble floors, glass walls, and a reception desk that looked like it cost more than my entire kitchen remodel. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile, looked up as I approached. "I'm here to see Richard Matthews," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her fingers already moving to check a calendar on her computer. "No, but I have something for him," I replied, lifting the box of pastries slightly. "I'm the owner of Sweet Endings Bakery." A flicker of recognition crossed her face, and for a moment, I thought she might turn me away. Instead, she picked up her phone and spoke quietly into it before looking back at me. "He can give you 5 minutes, she said, gesturing toward a hallway to her right. Last door on the left. My heart pounded as I walked down the hallway, past glass-walled offices where well-dressed people stared at computer screens or talked animatedly on phones. I reached the last door, a heavy wooden one with Richard Matthews, CEO, emblazoned on a gold plaque, and knocked. "Come in," called a voice from inside. I pushed open the door to find Richard sitting behind an enormous desk, his back to a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a spectacular view of the city. He looked up from his computer, and I saw the moment he recognized me. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he leaned back in his chair. "Ah, the baker," he said, his tone somewhere between amused and dismissive. "Come to complain about my review." I closed the door behind me and approached his desk, setting the box of pastries down in front of him. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I came to give you these. The croissants you claimed tasted like cardboard. I thought you should have a chance to try them properly, without the bitter taste of rejection clouding your judgment." He looked at the box and then back at me, clearly surprised by my approach. "You came all the way here to give me free pastries, after I left you a bad review?" He sounded genuinely confused. "I came here because your review wasn't just bad, it was dishonest," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "You were upset that we couldn't accommodate your last-minute request, and instead of accepting that, you decided to try to hurt my business with lies." He started to speak, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish, please. I understand you're a powerful man in this city, Mr. Matthews, but my bakery is my life's work. I have 15 employees who depend on me for their livelihoods. We serve hundreds of people every day who count on us for quality and consistency. Your review isn't just words on a screen, it has real consequences for real people." I opened the box, revealing an assortment of perfectly baked pastries, golden croissants, chocolate eclairs, fruit tarts, and our signature maple pecan rolls. "I'm not asking you to take down your review. I'm just asking you to try these, and if you still think they taste like cardboard, then at least your opinion will be based on the actual product, and not on your anger from that evening." Richard stared at the pastries for a long moment, then looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Finally, he reached for a croissant, broke it in half, revealing the perfect honeycomb interior structure that takes years to master, and took a bite. I watched as he chewed slowly, his expression changing from skepticism to something else entirely. He took another bite, then another, until the half croissant was gone. "This is exceptional," he admitted, sounding almost reluctant to give the compliment. "The layers are perfect." "Thank you," I said simply. He set down the remaining half and folded his hands on his desk. "But that doesn't change the fact that you refused to serve me when I needed an order." "I didn't refuse to serve you," I corrected him gently. "I offered you what we had available and proposed an alternative solution for the next morning. What I couldn't do was start a fresh baking process 5 minutes before closing when my staff had already cleaned most of the equipment and were ready to go home after a 12-hour day." Something shifted in his expression, a slight softening around the eyes. "Perhaps. I'm a business owner too," I continued. "I understand the pressure of deadlines and the need to impress clients, but I also understand the importance of respecting other people's boundaries and businesses." He was silent for a moment, studying me with new interest. Then he reached for his phone and tapped on the screen a few times before turning it around to show me. He had pulled up his review of my bakery. "Watch," he said, and pressed the delete button. The review disappeared. "Consider it gone. But not because you brought me free pastries or made me feel guilty. I'm removing it because you had the courage to come here and speak to me directly, business owner to business owner. That takes guts, especially given the difference in our influence." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I tried not to show it. "Thank you. That's all I came for." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "Wait," he said. "How much do I owe you for these?" I shook my head. "Consider it a peace offering." "No," he insisted, reaching for his wallet. "I want to pay. Name your price." I quoted him our regular price for the assortment, and he handed me twice that amount. "The extra is for your time and for the lesson in integrity." As I pocketed the money, he added, You know, I have a client appreciation event next week, about 50 people. I was going to have it catered by that fancy place on Fifth Avenue. But maybe we should talk about Sweet Endings handling it instead. I couldn't help but smile. I'd be happy to discuss that. Here's my card, call me tomorrow, and we can go over the details. As I turned to leave again, he called out once more. One more thing. What's your name? I just realized I never asked. I told him, and he nodded, as if committing it to memory. Well, he said, you've certainly made an impression today. Not many people would have handled this situation the way you did. I nodded in acknowledgement and left his office, feeling a strange mix of emotions: relief, pride, and a surprising sense of connection with a man who, just an hour ago, I had considered my enemy. The story could have ended there, with a deleted bad review and a potential new client. But what happened next surprised me even more. 2 days later, Richard Matthews walked into my bakery at 9 in the morning, right in the middle of our morning rush. The place was packed with the usual crowd: office workers grabbing coffee and pastries, mothers with young children enjoying a morning treat, and the regular seniors who occupied the corner table every day from 8 to 10, solving the world's problems over cups of coffee. Richard stood in line, waiting patiently, drawing a few curious glances from my staff, who recognized him from his previous visit. When he reached the counter, he ordered a coffee and 2 croissants to go, and paid without any fuss. As my barista handed him his order, he said, "I'd like to speak with the owner when they have a moment." I was in the back, finishing a batch of sourdough, but my manager called me out. I wiped my flour-covered hands on my apron and went to greet him, curious about this unexpected visit. "Mr. Matthews," I said, extending my hand. "This is a surprise." He shook my hand firmly. "I've been thinking about our conversation," he said, "and I realized something important. May I?" He gestured to an empty table near the window. We sat down, and he took a sip of his coffee before continuing. "I've been in business for 25 years, he began. Built my company from nothing to one of the largest real estate firms in the state. Along the way, I've developed certain expectations about how I should be treated." I nodded, unsure where this was going. "What I realized after you left my office is that I've become exactly the type of person I used to despise when I was starting out: entitled, arrogant, and quick to use my power to punish those who don't bend to my will." He paused, looking uncomfortable with his own admission. "Your approach, bringing me those pastries, speaking to me with respect but also standing your ground, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That true business success isn't just about profit margins and power plays. It's about integrity and mutual respect." I was stunned into silence. This was not what I had expected from the man who, just days ago, had tried to damage my reputation out of spite. "Anyway," he continued, "I didn't just come here to philosophize. I wanted to let you know that I've not only deleted my review, but I've also posted a new, honest one, 5 stars, and I've finalized the details for my client event with your manager. 50 people, next Thursday, our finest selection." That's great. I managed to say thank you. "Don't thank me," he said, rising from his chair. "I'm just doing what I should have done in the first place, being fair." As he prepared to leave, he hesitated, then added, "You know, we have a small cafe space on the ground floor of our new development on the east side. The previous tenant backed out last minute, and we've been looking for the right business to fill it. Would you be interested in discussing a possible second location for Sweet Endings?" My heart skipped a beat. Expansion had always been a dream of mine, but the right opportunity had never presented itself. Yes, I'd definitely be interested in discussing that," I replied, trying to contain my excitement. "Good," he nodded. "Have your people call my people?" He smiled slightly at the cliché. "Or just call me directly. Either way, I think this could be the beginning of a mutually beneficial relationship." With that, he left, leaving me sitting at the table, stunned by the complete reversal of our situation. The client event the following week was a massive success. Richard's colleagues and clients raved about our pastries, and several of them became regular customers. More importantly, the discussions about the East Side location progressed quickly. And 3 months later, Sweet Endings East opened its doors in a prime location, with terms that were surprisingly favorable for a small business like mine. Richard attended the opening, purchasing the first coffee and pastries served at the new location. As I handed him his change, he said something that has stayed with me ever since. "You know, most people would have just fought fire with fire, left me a bad review on my business page, or complained to friends about the jerk real estate guy. But you chose to confront me with truth and dignity. That made all the difference. What started as a potentially damaging situation for my business turned into an unexpected opportunity for growth, not just for my bakery, but for me personally. I learned the power of confronting difficulties directly, with honesty, and without malice. I learned that sometimes, the person who seems like your worst enemy can become an important ally, and Richard, he's now a regular at both my locations. He brings clients for meetings, stops by for coffee several times a week, and always leaves a generous tip. He's told me that our conversation that day in his office changed something in him, reminded him of values he'd lost sight of over the years. The lesson I take from all this is simple but profound. When faced with unfairness or injustice, especially in business, the easy path is to respond in kind, to lash out, to seek revenge, to try to hurt as you've been hurt. But the more powerful approach is to respond with truth, delivered with respect and dignity. That bad review could have been just another digital wound in the life of a small business owner. Instead, it became the catalyst for a relationship that has benefited us both in ways neither of us could have anticipated. So the next time someone treats you unfairly, or tries to harm your reputation, remember my story. Consider confronting them not with anger or vengeance, but with truth and an open hand. You might be surprised at what grows from that seed of integrity. If you enjoyed this true story from my business journey, please subscribe to my channel for more real-life lessons and experiences. I share new stories every week about the unexpected challenges and triumphs of entrepreneurship. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.